Welcome to Inspired for More podcast. I am so happy you're here. My name is Alexandra, and I have helped and I continue to help leaders grow and scale their businesses into multi-million-dollar sales organizations. I am insanely passionate about stepping into the very best version of ourselves and letting go of stories that no longer serve us. The more we achieve and expand ourselves, the more we give permission to the world to do the same thing. If anything here inspired you, just know you were actually meant to inspire others. Now let's dive into an episode. Welcome to another episode of Inspired for More. I am thrilled that you pressed play today. And today's actually a really valuable conversation that we're going to have on Inspired for More. And if this is your first time tuning in, everything that I come and share on this platform is all about stepping into the highest version of yourself. When I think about being inspired for more, is being in spirit for more. And I've always been somebody who's thrived for excellence, to tap into the highest consciousness of myself. And that's what I really want to be adding as value on this platform. And particularly Brianna being a guest on this episode, I am just so thrilled that you said yes, because for anybody who's new, I actually just lost my mom about 14 months ago. And as I was going through that journey, it was the first time in my life that I've ever experienced grief at that level. I had lost grandparents. I had lost, people that you expect to lose in your lifetime. For some reason, for me, I was like, I never really thought that my mom was ever, she used to say all the time, like, oh, I'm going to live till I'm 95. I'm like, no, I never like, there's never an end to this. Like, she was always that kind of person. And so even though she was sick my whole life, I just never anticipated like a finality to it. And so as I was going through that season, that's exactly how I met Brianna, because she was so sweet. She sent me a message on Instagram and she was like, hey, maybe you want to listen to this. And I was like, thank you so much. And it was a really powerful podcast that you did with someone else. And I was like, in that season of not even being able to put words to it, I was like, even to the point that I would go out for a walk with my dog, go work out, to be on calls. Like, I couldn't even hold myself back from crying so much. And I didn't even think I had that much tears in me. And I feel so grateful. Like, I was putting my makeup on before getting on this recording, Brianna. And I was like, oh, they say time heals things. And I'd be lying to tell you like, oh, I'm totally over it. And I'm at another place. And this is just a simple recording of just sharing where I'm at personally. And then we're going to intertwine some resources for you. And I think you're going to be really deeply touched by Brianna's story. But as I was putting on my makeup, I was like, oh, feels so good to be 14 months later. I'm grateful that I'm not still in that whole, like, I don't think I'll ever be happy again. I don't think I'll ever feel joy again. And it just felt so, and when we look at the emotional frequency scale, like, grief is one of the lowest vibrational feelings on the planet. And you're like, okay, well, I want to be high vibrational, but how the heck do I do that when I'm going through the worst time of my life and it feels like it's never going to end? And so I know that you know a lot about that. So maybe take some time and explain about how you were introduced to grief through an unfortunate incident. And I think that everybody can kind of relate to how powerful the new journey that you've taken on and helping and assisting people go through that too.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and for asking me to be here. So I was introduced into grief far before I realized what I was actually in. So in 2019, I lost my youngest brother to suicide, unfortunately. So as you can imagine, it completely rocked my world. We grew up in a very, very broken home, and I often took care of my two younger brothers. So when I lost him, part of me was like, I feel like I'm kind of losing like a child at the same time. Like I raised this kid from diapers up. So it was like it felt like a twofold loss. And also I live across the country. So I'm from the Northeast. I now live out in Los Angeles. He was back in New Hampshire, where I'm from. And so just so far away. So it felt really, really hard. I had so much pressure on myself because he had been going through a very difficult time. And as I like to say, I should all over myself. Like, I should have been better. I should be there. I should have said this. I should have done that. And so I was just in a really, really difficult place. And I knew I had been through so much in life and come out the other side and looked back and was like, holy heck, how did I even get through all of that? But I knew to my core that this was something that this was not going to be the same. I was not going to be able to just plow through this like I had done other obstacles and life challenges previously. So a pastor of mine recommended that I go meet with this specific grief counselor. And I was like, I just need to talk to someone. Like, I can't keep it together. Similar to how you were like, I can't stop crying. What is going on?
I'm like, I can't just brush this off by just like meditating or whatever used to make me, or going for a long run or anything that used to make me feel good. Nothing could fix it.
Yeah, like no matter how great your gratitude mindset is, it will not just
No,
fix your grief,
no.
unfortunately. So I went and I met with a grief counselor, and she walked me through a program. It's called Grief Recovery. It's the only evidence-based grief method that there is. It's been around for 40 plus years. It's translated in over 200, or it's in over 200 countries and translated in multiple languages. So, and I mean, I didn't know any of that going into it. But I walked into her office on the first day and just kind of unloaded and shared everything that was on my heart. And so she shared a little bit about the program and what we're doing. And I walked out of her office dumbfounded because she educated me on what grief is and what I was feeling. And in that knowledge, it alleviated me of so many question marks, and it just allowed me to feel. And I think that's what holds us back in grief the most, is that we don't know what it is. We don't know how all encompassing it is. And because of that, we walk around with this uneasiness of question marks of, am I doing this right? Am I honoring them? Am I honoring who I was before this completely changed my life? Who will I be after? We have so many questions. And I think knowing about grief helped alleviate those, in that it gave me the space to just feel and to just be and move through the season. Also, it helped me understand that grief isn't just losing someone that you love. Of course, that brings grief, but there's so many other life occurrences over 40 that you can go through and experience grief. And so that education on top of it helped me understand that while I loved my brother and this was the hardest thing that I had ever gone through in life, this was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. I was carrying around so much grief prior and just like in a bag, just schlepped over my shoulder, walking around with it, weighing me down, slowing me down. And I just didn't realize. And so we then proceeded to walk through the grief recovery method, which is this evidence-based proven method that helps you basically not only understand what grief is, but you move through an action-based program that enables you to kind of look at each individual grievance in your life and work with them to be able to what we call recover. So you never like get over your grief. And I love how you brought up, I love that you brought up how you feel better about being 14 months in,
Yeah.
because you're so right. Time doesn't heal. That's actually one of the myths that we're taught and that are socialized in life. Like if I just push this away a year from now, like I'm going to feel a little bit better. I'm going to be thinking
Yeah.
about it less.
Yeah.
And it doesn't heal it. Like it's still there. And that's why you'll still feel tears coming to your eyes, or you could still have a really, really bad day. It's because all those emotions exist inside of you. And you have to think about yourself as like, I use the analogy of like a backpack. So we're all given a backpack when we're born. And as we experience these life changes and grievances, and grief is really a loss of any kind.
Yeah.
So we start losing things very, very young, and no one ever teaches you how to lose something. We're always taught how to acquire things, be patient and be kind and be polite to get what you want, and go to school and get good grades to get a good GPA. And when you get that good GPA, you go to college, and then you get a good,
Right.
a major to get the job, to get the house, to get the family, like
And you
everything.
never take time to freeze in between any of those spaces. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. We're constantly on the go. We're constantly acquiring. No one has ever said, hey, you're going to lose something on the way and it's going to feel like the worst thing ever, but here's how to deal with it. Like no one taught me that. And so
Oh,
when you reach that season, it can be so difficult. So I love sharing that grief is a loss of any kind. And we start acquiring these at a very young age. Like, have you ever lost a pet before? Have you ever lost a grandparent before? Have you, all of these varying things. For myself, like, I don't know about you, but have you ever moved in your life?
Well, and that was one of the things that I so related to you in that original podcast that I heard you speak. Because when I originally listened to your podcast, it was like a month, 3 weeks after my mom passed away, and which felt like the biggest slap in the face because I felt like I was already in grief and I didn't know how to explain it. And when I listened to you, I realized, wow, I moved countries and I never processed this. I was like, this was a destination I put on my vision board. I should be happy. I should be feeling blessed. I should be feeling this, but only to be feeling lost for the last 3 years. And then having my mom suddenly pass away within 13 days. Like it was just kind of like one of these things that I was like in the twilight zone. And to realize when I was listening to you, I was like, wow, I've been processing grief for way longer than this incident. And so you can talk
Yeah.
about that because I don't think we've ever really thought about grief about moving either.
Yeah, you don't, but you have to think it's a loss of, so you're from Canada. I'm
Yeah.
gonna, yeah, the fluent French. It always gets me. I listen to every video and I'm like, I have zero idea what you're saying, but it's just so eloquent.
It's so fun.
So it's a loss of familiarity. It's a loss of routine. It's a loss of ease, right? When you're in a location for so long and you know where all the stores are, you know where you can go to get your nails done, you know where you can go to get your hair cut, oh, I just got to run to Sephora. It's around the corner. Like, let me go get this. Or, that familiarity, that ease, that just ability to have things at your fingertips to when you are now transplanted, no matter how long you've wanted and you've dreamed and it's been on your vision board to be in this new location, there's going to be a level of grief that comes with that because there's a whole new season of learning. And that's why I really started my company, Good Grief, is because it's not that, when we hear the word grief, we associate it with like bereavement and just a loss of someone we love, and people think that it's the worst of the worst. And don't get me wrong, it does include the worst of the worst, and it does include losing someone that you love, but there's also so much good that comes in grief. And I think that is opened up when we have a better understanding of what grief is, how it's affecting us, and how we can move and grow with it, because you never really get rid of your grief, right? The point of the grief recovery method and the program and that you walk through with the steps is to get to a place where the sadness will always exist. Like, you will always miss your brother. I always miss my brother. However, it doesn't feel like someone is twisting a knife in my stomach anymore.
Right.
I'm able to talk about him and say his name and share stories and talk about how he died, which is a really unfortunate situation, but I'm able to use that to share information, to inspire people, to love on people. And so when we go through these hardships, giving ourselves that time to grieve, understanding what it is, but walking through the completion process enables us to grow around our grief so that we can use it to inspire, empower, and be there for others. So I know you mentioned like grief is super, super low on the vibration scale for emotions, but I do believe like the education and understanding it enables you to kind of like shoot yourself back up and use what you know about grief to help others, which is exactly what I've done. And maybe not help others necessarily in grief, but in whatever field or industry you're in, it just enables you to be a better person and love others. I always share that loss gives you a new lens on life. It's like you can see more clearly. You understand, if it is the loss of someone that you love, you understand the brevity of life.
Yeah.
If it's the loss of, maybe it's the loss of a home. Maybe in California, we have like a fire season.
And like I have the hurricanes on my side. So it's like see the
Yeah.
duality and how challenging and saddening it is. And it's such a good point because just earlier, I was thinking about this conversation we're going to have. And I was thinking about how grateful I am that I've gone through grief. Because today I can totally have the compassion. Like I remember watching people on social media lose somebody close to them and post that they had lost XYZ person in their life. And I remember feeling compassion and feeling like I was understanding and writing a message and, maybe even private messaging, but I never understood the depth of it. Like I didn't even understand the depth of it. And I'm so grateful for the experience because now today I can totally send a message and be like, I understand where you're at. And like with so much more understanding, even though everybody's grief journey is totally different from one to another, I feel gratitude, and I feel like that's what's brought me back up the emotional scale is first of all taking time to pause and actually feel, because
Yes.
as high achievers that we are, and I'm so excited that you started this company. I was telling you earlier because I'm like, this is phenomenal. Not enough people help people process grief, and I think it's going to be so powerful. And I hope that you go into details about exactly who you're out to help, because when it comes down to it, when I think about the amount of times that I used to talk, like pause, I prior to all this, I got certified in yoga. I was like, I thought I was doing, but I was so busy doing than feeling, right? And it's like, you can check off all the boxes, but it will never clear it up until you actually sit in the emotion. And it's been wild, Brianna. Like, I've really fallen in love with a lot of somatic exercises more than ever, and just like feeling emotions in my body, cutting energetic chains that have been holding me back for so long, and realizing that the energy that I hold, it, as much as it can serve the universe and it can serve so many people around me, it's super important for me to really hone in on my own energy and not be giving it away to everybody else, because that's what was draining me for years. So grief actually opened up all of that to me, to realize like we all have this superpower and this magnetism about ourselves, but you can't be doing that without taking time to feel every little bit. And inside of all of us is like, we talk about the inner child. Like, there's a 3-year-old version of us in each of us. There's a
Yeah.
5-year-old, there's a 7-year-old, there's a 13-year-old, there's a 15-year-old, there's a 20-year-old. Like, I'm like turning 38 this weekend. Like, there's a 35-year-old version of me. And so I take time throughout this whole last year. I've really taken time to sit down and sit and still in stillness and remind myself of like instances maybe of sadness, like you were talking about, that I felt in my subconscious mind. Like sometimes you won't even remember these things on a conscious level. You'll be able to resonate with them on a subconscious level. So sometimes just sitting there in silence and asking your subconscious to speak to you, and you go, when was the first time that I ever felt sadness? And you're gonna get an inkling and a feeling and a vision if you actually sit in stillness and ask for the answers, and the answers will come to you. And then feeling those emotions kind of clear up. And it's wild because you and I both do healthy living. We love doing healthy living. And
Yeah.
the thing is what I realized more than ever is that I was holding on to so much trauma inside my body that I didn't even feel light about life. And throughout this whole process that felt like the heaviest stone, like in my life, I've been able to start breathing better. I've been able to coast through and get rid of things. And of course, I'm like, I would never preface that I'm any perfect human being, because we all keep going through this process, and things that you thought you cleared up, you keep clearing up, and lessons that you thought you learned,
Yeah.
you keep relearning. But I'm in love with this journey, and I'm in love with the fact of being able to hone in silence and just listen to myself. And I think the saddest thing that I find, that's why I'm so happy that you started Good Grief, is because throughout this process, a lot of people have reached out to me that maybe that have lost a mom 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and are still stuck in the emotion of grief, and like a very active emotion of grief that's actually stopping themselves from living a fulfilled life and living out their life mission. And so I'd love for you to speak on like what was evident. We know that the calling of Good Grief, but really, who do you really work with if somebody's listening in and they feel like maybe it's not something that they're currently living in, but they're still in the current state of grief?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work one-on-one with individuals to walk them through this program, and it is a 7 action-based program. So I do mostly on Zoom is how I work with clients, and we walk through the program. You read a book. It's action-based, which I love because I'm very action forward, and I would guess that you are too, with how much you, again, it's socialized on us how much we're taught to acquire and do things. So when it comes to grief, it's it can be so overwhelming and all encompassing that it is hard for people to sit there and like, what am I feeling? Well, I'm depressed and I'm anxious and I'm hungry, but I'm also not hungry at the same time. And I'm exhausted, but I haven't slept in 3 days. And so it's like, because you're all over the place, it can be so hard to sit down. So I love that it is action based. We read through a book. I like have it right here in front of me.
Oh, cool.
um, But I'm obsessed with it because, again, chapters 1 through 5 really just teach you like, what is grief? How do I even talk about it? Exactly am I feeling? And it talks about myths that we're taught to believe in how to deal with grief, right? So, for example, or how to deal with loss. So, for example, and I was just sharing this on social media. If you had a pet when you were younger and the pet passed away and your parents are devastated and they love you and they know how much you love the dog and they just like, we want to fix this, we want to help her feel better, and they get you a new dog,
Right.
right then and
How
there,
often do you
you're
see that?
socialized to connect. Oh, if I lose something, I can just replace the loss and that'll fix it. But like that doesn't work when you lose your mom. Like there's no replacing our mom, there's no replacing our people. That doesn't work when you lose your house to a hurricane. Sure, I can go out and get another house, but I birthed my children in that house. Or, but that was the house that my husband filled with rose petals and proposed to me on the doorstep. Or that was like our first house that we bought together. That was the first property, right? So replacing the loss is not the answer, but it's something that we're taught and socialized how to believe. Another myth would be time heals all wounds. Time does not heal. It's what you do within the time that can bring you healing,
So
right?
true.
That's why you're having people reach out who lost their mom maybe 5 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, and are still feeling this overwhelming sadness and
Yeah,
that.
because they'll send me messages and be like, "How are you really?" And I'm like,
Yeah,
"I'm actually like feeling better than I've ever felt before because I've been processing this on a really deep, deep level instead
yeah.
of like just kind of putting a band-aid, like you said. Like, there's no amount of credit card that could cover." There is no credit card healing. It will not help. Call it like shopping therapy or what is
Retail therapy.
yeah, retail therapy. There's no retail therapy that will fix this.
Yeah. And I love how you shared about the rhythms, right? So we call those STIRBs, which is an acronym. It stands for short-term energy releasing behavior. So oftentimes we'll fall into what is called a STIRB, and retail therapy is a really good example of one where it's an action that we can take that makes us feel better in the moment. And it masks, it kind of puts away that sadness, right? And enables us to move forward for maybe another week, maybe another month, maybe another 3 months until we're now overwhelmed with that sadness again. And then we'll go out and we'll do another shopping haul, right?
Right.
So retail
Or have
therapy,
another glass of wine or, wind
yes.
down. You know,
Yeah, substance abuse, absolutely. Alcohol can be drugs. It can be prescription pills. So substance abuse is certainly a way to not feel what you're feeling, right? And to be able to release that short-term energy. Um, but they can also be healthy. It can also be working out.
yeah.
Working out is, we talk about healthy living. We love healthy living. I work out 3 times a week. I weight lift. I'm like so sore right now from yesterday's workout. It's ridiculous. I'm like moving my shoulders hurts, but working out can certainly be a stir. Shopping can be a stir. Eating can be a stir. What are some of the things, when I was growing up and my great grandparents died, I just remember coming back to my aunt's house and the table was filled with food. Like neighbors and people had come over and given food. So, like when you're sad, oh, here, eat. Well, okay, so now we're connecting overindulgence with sadness, and we're thinking that that's going to be the answer to help us. And so, when we feel sad in life, now we might run to food because we've unintentionally picked that up in our youth, or we've seen it, or it could have just been on a movie and people were bringing over chocolate covered fruit or those baskets.
True.
So all of these things are impressioned on us. And so the first few steps of the book really walk people through understanding, like, here's what's been impressed upon you and how to deal with grief. Here are the myths. Here are some options and how people tend to lean in and try to process it by leaning in and choosing those stirbs. And you can jump from one to the other as well when it comes to stirbs. So here are ways that people have tried to fix it, but like, here's how we actually fix it. And I walk through emotional tools. I teach individuals these emotional tools. One of my favorite parts about the program, and this is anyone and everyone dealing with grief. So you asked who I help. So to answer a question that's the longest way possible, I help anyone and everyone going through grief, whether you lost someone yesterday or whether you lost someone 27 years ago. One thing I do love to share, especially when you've lost someone and that you're going through what we call a significant grief. So The two most significant grievances are the loss of a loved one or a divorce, which
Mm.
is a loss of a loved one. They're
Yeah.
just still here.
Yeah.
So those are the two most significant. All of the other arrays of types of loss, like moving or moving houses, graduating college can absolutely be a
Yeah.
loss.
Yeah.
Again, you've been in an institution most of the day for 5 days a week for your entire life. And now it's like, here you go, figure it out, have fun, right? So that can also bring grief. So all of the other arrays of grief are what's known as secondary. So whether you're someone who has just experienced a secondary grievance and a primary grievance, I work with you and we go through this program. It's 7 sessions online on Zoom. And what was I just going to say? What I love to share about grief. I totally just had something.
But you were bringing them through the significant emotional events, right? Like the
Yeah, yeah. So the emotional tools that I teach. Oh, sorry, I just remembered. So whether you're the person who's lost someone yesterday or 27 years ago, I always share with people, when we break an arm, we don't wait until we understand what's happening to go to the doctor and get it set back in place.
right.
When when something happens internally and we maybe have a minor heart attack, we're not going to wait and just see what happens for another month or two until I feel better about it or I can cope with the fact that I had a minor heart attack to go and get it looked at by a doctor. And I would say the same is true for your emotional heart. When you go through something, again, we know time doesn't heal, it just prolongs it, but simultaneously, even if it happened yesterday, I would encourage you the same way you think about therapy, the same way you think about going to a medical professional to get your body looked at, you have to look at your emotional self the same exact way, in that you need to honor yourself in seeking out what is going to help. And if it has, and I don't want to make anyone feel bad if it has been super, super long and someone passed away 20 years and you're still not right. And you're like, I think I want to go through this. I don't want to make you feel bad that you haven't chosen that. Again, it's just nothing you were ever taught. But I hope it encourages you hearing it now on this
And
podcast.
I love the fact that you're saying that right now because I just finished my neurolinguistic practitioner training. Okay. So what happens is this is the language of the subconscious mind. And exactly what you're doing at Good Grief is exactly what we talk about in terms of your health and your body and your life mission. When you go through a significant emotional event, it actually has been directly linked to so many bodily illnesses.
Yeah.
And so if we don't process grief properly, we actually take away from our own life mission, our own life vitality, our own health, so many different aspects. And like the one thing that I keep reminding myself too is like my mom always said, I gave you life so that you would live life. And so the person who you lost would never want you to be sitting there taking away from your precious life. And I know that sounds so much simpler, that's easier said than done, but I'm always reminded of that. Like, it's actually my duty to live out my full potential. It's my duty to honor her. It's my duty to keep showing up, right?
Yeah.
So that can help somebody gives perspective, but I definitely think the tools that you're offering now. I remember when my mom first passed away, I got a bunch of different amazing people that sent me books. Okay. And
Yeah.
so you just mentioned that one. I don't know if you've ever heard of the one that was called Signs. Did you ever see that?
No,
Oh
no,
my
I
God, I'd be
don't.
so curious to know your take on that. Okay, so it
Yeah.
was basically like a visionary that was able to see souls passing through and that they were never like consciousness never passes away, right? The person that passed on never passed away. And so this isn't, we're talking a little bit more esoteric stuff, but at the same time, that has made me realize in so many different ways that life is not ended. It has not ended. The person that you have
Right.
lost is still present here today. Like their soul is still surrounding you, is what my personal belief is. And
Yeah.
consciousness never dies. And I still think about that too, like about my own soul. My own soul will live on forever. And so I found that book was very helpful. Would you recommend the book that you just showed as one of the first books alongside with the therapy?
Yeah, so if you sign up to go through the program with me as a grief counselor, then I actually send you this book. So this is
Okay,
the book
so there's
that
no
we
need to
read
purchase
through.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to purchase it. I send it to you. It's included. And so we read through it and we do all the assignments, but I teach you emotional tools and like how to look at your life And like we map out your entire life and like where are all the grievances? Again, both negatives below the line and positives above the line. And we work through to pick a singular grievance that you want to work on. Oftentimes it's the most prevalent. So if it was you, we would absolutely work on your mother, the loss of your mother, because it's the most prevalent loss, unless unfortunately you did just lose your house. I know you're in Florida and I really hope that wasn't the case. Okay. But yeah, it's usually the most prevalent and like the most significant that you feel is affecting you. So for me, it was my brother. But we then continue on in emotional tools to work through. And ultimately, when we're talking about how people carry around grief and how it can be so heavy. When we don't work on our grief, it turns into unresolved grief and we carry it with us. And I always use the analogy of a backpack. Like we're all given a backpack when we're born. And when we go through a loss of any kind, it's like a rock that you add to your backpack. And some of them can be pebbles. Some of them can be, handfuls, and others of them can be boulders, but we're carrying this around and it weighs us down both physically, mentally, or emotionally, the trifecta.
Yeah.
Spiritually, all of it, truthfully.
Yeah.
And so when we go through the program and you look at these emotional tools that we use to complete the significant grievance, you can then go back individually and use the same emotional tools to work on any grievance you've ever experienced in your life.
Very powerful.
And yeah, and now you're equipped with the knowledge, the understanding to go and to do that on your own. And I always share that oftentimes grief is all the things left unsaid. So when you take, for example, and this is going a little ways back, but I'm sure you're familiar with the September 11th attacks in New York City. And when you look at Flight 93, which was a third flight, you have a flight of individuals who become aware that their plane has been hijacked and they know that they're going to die within moments. And their initial instinct is to contact the people that they love. If I was on a plane that I knew was going down, I would be texting my husband. Yeah. I would call and leave a voicemail if I
all
can.
over the place just thinking about that.
Yeah. And so at the end of life, for anyone that has gone through a terminal illness, right? What are they doing? They're getting everything in order. They're communicating with the people that they love. They're reflecting and reminiscing on like beautiful moments in their life. They're saying their goodbyes, but they're making that communication. So oftentimes our grief is all the things left unsaid. And so the program and one of the emotional tools that we walk through is that communication. It's because you don't just lose someone, right? Like I didn't just lose my brother. I lost all of the hopes, dreams, and expectations that I had for him. I was so, just proud of him for the relationship that he was in and the woman that he found. And she's wonderful. And I love her dearly today. And I was so proud of him for actually, he was about to move to Florida. And I was like, good for you for getting out of our super tiny town that we love, but like, we don't want to live there anymore. So I was proud of him for dreaming about that, allowing himself to dream about that and make those moves. I was proud of him for where he was in work. And I was hopeful for the day that he was going to be the uncle to my children. And so all of those, I'll never forget when I graduated college and I looked at him and I said, "You're next." And he looked at me and kind of like smirked and laughed. And so he never, he was 20 years old. He never got to make it to college and to graduate. And so unfortunately, when you lose someone, you do lose all of those hopes, dreams, and expectations. So we talk about that in a communication sense, like how is that communicated? What can we say to the person that we've lost or the experience that we've lost, right? Is there forgiveness that needs to be had? And we don't look at forgiveness in a sense of, right, because this can get very personal in terms of like a trauma that someone has experienced. We're not looking at forgiveness like we're forgiving them for doing something wrong. Forgiveness is our ability to let go of hoping for a better yesterday. No matter what I do today, yesterday has happened. It has come and gone. And so I need to make peace with that and offer forgiveness wherever I can. And so we look at that in the sense of a relationship, and it's the same. So we're forgiving, we might, if someone was very inappropriate with us, we're not forgiving them for their actions. We're forgiving that it happened. And so it's looking at it in a sense of, are there things that we need to communicate to this person or this loss or about this situation? Because grief can be all of those things left unsaid. It can be the what ifs. It can be the I should haves. A really good illustration that I share with people, especially because, and I don't know when this podcast will come out, but as we're moving into the holiday
Into the
season.
holiday. And that's why I thought releasing it right before the holiday season is a great time, because a lot of people are going to be feeling maybe it's the first holiday. I know that was for me last year, and I felt like totally unhappy. Like I wasn't happy during, and that the most jolliest time of the year didn't feel very jolly.
Yeah. And so a
Yeah.
really good analogy that I share with people is the tea kettle analogy. And if you think about a tea kettle on the stove, and there's this water in the tea kettle, right? And so all of the water is the trauma, the grief, the loss that we all already have, right? Because again, it's that backpack. We start acquiring them at a very young age and we don't stop. And so all the water in the tea kettle is your loss and your grief that you currently have. And in the holiday season, you are going to experience some emotional triggers. For example, happy people. When you're upset, someone who walks in and has this bright big smile, it's the best day ever. Like, we woke up today, it's amazing. Like, that can be really triggering to someone who is like, I just lost my mom. Like,
Yeah.
for me, it was going to Trader Joe's. Every Trader Joe's employee is like the happiest person on the planet. And I'm
So
just
true.
like,
And like, how do they do that nationwide, though?
I
Seriously,
don't know.
how
I
can they
don't
do
know.
that?
But good on Trader Joe's,
Because
man.
Canada doesn't have Trader Joe's. So that was like a new phenomenon for me when I moved to the United States. I was like, how are they always so happy? I need a location you go to. But go
Yeah,
on.
I don't know if it's the Hawaiian shirt. I don't know, but they're so jolly. And so for me, I'm like, not a single one of you understands that like I lost my brother 7 hours ago. I need you to just like step back, stop asking how I am, right? And so you'll be going through these triggers, whether it is a Trader Joe's associate smiling at you, or if it is someone jolly that walks in the room, or maybe it's an empty place setting at the table. Or maybe it's the fact that you lost your dog and your dog always licked your face to wake you up Christmas morning. Or, you're going to move through these triggers. And so for every trigger, bringing it back to the tea kettle analogy, is like a flame under the kettle. And when you turn the flame up on a kettle that is already like making sound, it's just going to continue to boil and boil and boil out. And then what we tend to do as just natural human beings, it's the humanness in us, is we should all over ourselves. So I should be happy because it's Christmas. I shouldn't be thinking about the negatives. I should be joyful in watching my children open their gifts. I should be appreciative for the people that I have here and not harp on the people that aren't here anymore. And when you should all over yourself, that's the cork that's stopping the tea kettle. And so it can just become this really overwhelming, I don't know how to deal with it. The tea kettle is on a ton of like strong flames screaming. What do I even do? And the first thing that I always share with people is awareness. Is being aware that, okay, there are like the flame is increasing underneath my tea kettle right now, and I am not doing well. The number one thing I would say is just to tap in and say, okay, I'm aware of how I'm feeling right now. And just to pause. If you're in the middle of a busy mall, maybe you're driving and your kids are screaming in the back seat. Maybe you're on a walk in the morning with a cup of tea, like wherever you are, just literally pause and say, I understand how I feel, or maybe I don't understand how I feel, but I just understand that I have big feelings right now, and that's okay. Just remind yourself that it's okay. You're human. We're going to move through these things. So awareness is always the first thing, sharing that it's okay. Remembering the spout of the tea kettle and to not plug it with more cork. So don't, I should. Like that doesn't do anything for you. It just makes you feel worse. So instead of saying I should, again, remind yourself like, I'm feeling this and it's okay. I can still move forward. I can still move forward or I will be okay. That was one of my go-to lines when I initially lost my brother, because people, it's just like, it comes out before they even understand, oh, how are you?
Yeah.
And that sentence feels like a knife in my back. I'm like, I am not well. Please stop asking me. So I remember one of the things that I adapted and I said, I'm not okay, but I will be. And
Mm,
so reminding yourself that in this season, if you are going through grief, if the flames are increasing with everything that's around you and moving and the situations that you're in, remind yourself, I'm not okay, but I will be. And in
mm.
your not okayness, allow yourself to step away. If it is the dinner table, hey, I'm just going to excuse myself. I need just a quick minute. I'm going to run to the room, or I'm going to run to the bathroom, or I'm just going to go over here and sit for a moment. Um, Another thing is if you're listening to this and you're supporting or loving on someone that's moving through grief, I always share the best help. Well, first is that hurt people don't want to be healed, they want to be heard. So if
Well,
you
that's
are,
so good. Hurt
yeah, if you
people don't want
are,
to be healed. They want to be heard. I love that.
yeah, again, it brings it back to that communication. And then sometimes, hurt people don't have the words, which is okay again. But I always share that in supporting, it's choosing the empathy over sympathy. So obviously, we're sympathetic. We feel bad for them. We want to help them. However, they don't need sympathy. They're also sympathizing with themselves. They need empathy. They need presence. They need people to be there. And empathy can look like sitting next to someone on the couch and not saying a word, like just being present with them while they're like a blubbering mess. Or maybe they're just sitting there and relaxing with a glass of wine by themselves and they just don't want to talk or have conversation. Like just go sit with them and be with them.
Right.
Empathy can look like, hey, I'm running to Target. Do you need paper towels, toilet paper, tissues? Can I pick up anything? I'll just drop it on your doorstep. So you have it. You don't even have to come out. And just letting them know, like, I'm here. I see you. I know the season you're in. I love you. And I want to show up and be present for you in this way. Empathy could be like, hey, I made a ton of dinner tonight. Can I drop some leftovers for you guys so you can have the next couple of
Which is
days?
beyond helpful. Beyond.
Yes, it's the
That is
best.
the best.
Yeah, because even like I had we had friends make meal trains and it was so wonderful because people would be able to sign up, like our community was able to sign up to
Wow.
say, hey, we're bringing a dinner this time, we're bringing a dinner
So
this
cool.
time. So that's another effective way to help someone if they're like newly in the grief season. But just think of small present ways like, hey, can I know you're probably not doing too much. Can I just come over and fold your laundry or can I wash some of your laundry for you? Or like, hey, when's the last time you like changed your bed sheets? Can I just do that for you? Obviously, like depending on the level of
The level
friendship.
of relationship. If you don't,
Yeah.
if you've never been to their house before, maybe don't ask
Right.
much.
Yeah, no, that's not the presence for you. However, gauge on your level of relationship with them. Just stepping in and where you can. Oftentimes it's going to be the things that like we don't like doing for ourselves. So
Right.
just think of, your friend or your person, your family member, and what it was. What were those things that they didn't really like doing? Like, hey, can I come walk your dog?
Yeah.
Something so simple. Maybe they just like can't get out of sweats and they don't want to get up off the couch. Give them that and alleviate them of a
So
task.
happy you mentioned all those examples because it's so true. Like throughout the holiday seasons, you want to maybe just gift somebody something material, but everything that you just mentioned was actually the biggest. Like I have people in my circle that I every time I think about them today, I'm like, I can't even put into words how much I love them, and they didn't even do anything significant apart from just being there, just sitting
Yeah.
there. Right. And like that brings tears to my eyes. And I think to myself, like, that really, you can be that person in the light in someone's darkness during those seasons. So I'm just so thankful for this conversation. I'm thankful we're going to release this before the holidays because one thing I know is what we were saying earlier is like, no, none of us are going to live this human experience without ever living grief. Right.
Yeah.
And it's as sad as it is, as much of a gift it is, because I think that as a collective, we all share the collective energy. And so the more that we can empathize with each other and have gone through these moments together, the more we can elevate the conscious energy. And I'm all about vibe. I'm all about the vibe. So I want to thank you so much, Brianna. And where can people find you? We're going to put it in the show notes, but put it on the recording so maybe they can just go directly there and we'll add it in the show notes.
Yeah, so kind. Thank you. So Instagram is always my go-to, which my handle is just at Brianna Fatel, my name. And then you can also go to my website, which is goodgriefco.org. And I'll have a little bit more information about the program. I mentioned I walk through one-on-one with any individual grieving. I also offer a secondary program, which I do in a group setting. It is virtual online, so I can service anyone in the world, truthfully. So long as I can figure out how to get you a book, we're good. And then that secondary course is helping children with loss, because my heart, in the nature that I lost my brother, my heart is really in preventative measures and how can we help young kids and young individuals understand that what they're feeling is normal, they're not alone. And again, just empathize with them in whatever season or challenge or stage of life that they're moving through. So that's really on the preventative measure. You'll find out more about that on my website. But oftentimes what ends up happening is people, because we never want to help ourselves, right? But we're always wanting to help others. So oftentimes I always get people sign up for the Helping Children with Loss class. And then as we move through that, they're like, man, I think I have some grief I need to work on. And so what ends up happening is I just will do a discounted rate, and I'm like, yes, let's plug you in. We'll work through the program with you. But I would highly encourage anyone who is grieving, or if you know someone that's grieving, certainly send this to them. As Alexandra said, it can really help someone who is in that season if they just listen to it. And that little bit of encouragement can carry them and spark something inside them that maybe will encourage them to help themselves. So,
and your voice, Brianna, is just so soothing. There is no better suited person to be a grief counselor or a grief coach on the planet, because when you talk, I'm like, first of all, when you talk, people listen. Second of all, you just bring like so much ease to my heart when I listen to you. So I'm so grateful for this conversation.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you. This has been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me for an episode. I so beyond appreciate being on this journey with you. And if this served you in any way, take time, leave a review, leave a comment, tag me on Instagram. I'd love to add you to my private community that I'm sharing inspirational content every single day. And most of all, when we share this kind of content, we actually take time and elevate the world to a whole other level of consciousness. And so on that note, have a blessed day.